Welcome to Casual Watch Talk, the podcast from the Casual Watch Reviewer YouTube channel. Join us as we talk everything watches, from watch collecting, the latest horology news and interviews. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe on your favourite podcast app. Let's dive into the show. Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 34 of Casual Watch Talk.
Wow.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? I know we're nearly at our actual
You're
ages
right,
or
yeah.
close to it, but we will never tell.
Getting in a crisis now.
Exactly. How have you been this week,
Not
Chris?
bad. Hanging in there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's been an interesting week, hasn't it? It's been super hot here, which it is rare. I know we live in California, but the part of California that we live in never gets swelteringly hot like it is now.
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah, usually maybe like every couple years there's like 1 or 2 weeks where we'll peak over 100 something for a few days. But the inland is toasty, and what was it? The record for 130 degrees in Mojave. So not that hot here, but certainly hunkered down in the AC.
Join in next week for Casual Weather Talk with Sam and
Right,
Chris.
exactly. We've got a low pressure system coming up into no one cares.
Well then, let's kick it off as always. I think we've got quite a few news stories this week, so this should be interesting. A lot has happened, even though it's been a fairly average week in the world, I think, except for the pandemic, etc. But there's been quite a lot of interesting watch stories and a lot of discussion on the Facebook group, so big thanks to everyone on there. Well, let's kick it off, Chris. Have you had a watch obsession this week? I know last week it was super interesting. You were talking about your 3D printed tourbillon, so maybe we should have a tourbillon update and then your obsession.
Yeah. So okay. Well, we can continue with 3D printing because it's kind of a part and parcel. I finished a metallic one. And basically I had picked up a 3-pack of bronze, gold, and silver PLA on Amazon, and printed up a couple of the tourbillons, and fun little project to put together, like super glue and a little bit of some 2mm metal rods, like stainless steel, so that like all the little mechanical parts ride on that, and it's like made to fit. A little bit of tinkering, and it was quite successful. So made 2 of those, gave those to one of the local, sent one off to a local a watch geek here in town. So hopefully we'll see it again on Instagram, I'm sure.
But yeah, it's really cool, that, isn't it? How you make it. I'm imagining your 3D print sort of like a tiny little glue gun and its continuous stream. Yeah,
it melts a stream of plastic, and then just it's got a little 0.4 millimeter nozzle, and it just goes around. It's the new Prusa Mini, which is just a small. It's like a 18 centimeter by 18 centimeter cube, basically, of volume. So it's perfect for the stuff that I wanted to do and the stuff that I do. Like, I don't need to. I'm not printing cars out of it, but at the same time, it's nice to be able, phone stuff and little holders for things and random. And my watch obsession this week is I got back into the NATO adapters for my Casio Solar. And so I'll have to post pictures on the Facebook group. I have a prototype now with the screws in the side.
Oh, right.
And so it's got, it's in prototype blue. So it looks kind of funky. It looks like a Casio Solar with a neck collar on it.
Obviously, the listeners can't see this, but that's definitely an improvement. The other ones where you can see how it's evolved.
Actually has the strap through it. I think it will be strong enough. Going to print it out of a slightly different plastic. I was started to write down the iterations, and I think probably as old as the podcast now, like 30s. I'm in the iteration number 30 with this one. So making little progress. Eventually, I'll kind of do some more tests and then print it out of, like I said, a stronger plastic and give it a go. Because anything that you're going to put on a NATO, on a G-Shock, I mean, it has to survive. So can't be flimsy. It just comes with the territory.
My watch obsession, I might forgo it because I was really obsessed with this watch, and now it's come out. And to be honest, we might as well dive into this as the first news story, because It's a combined one. I was really looking forward to this watch, and after seeing it, loved it even more. But then, oh boy, the price. And what I'm talking about here, Chris, is the new Accutron watch.
Oh, yeah.
They've basically recreated the iconic Space View watch that they had. If anyone's seen this, I know people on the Facebook group are very familiar with it. It looks like a circuit board inside. It looks like the dial is a circuit board, but that's actually the movement inside. So this was the original Accutrons were pre-quartz, and they worked off electrostatic energy, not electromagnetic energy like the quartz watches do. So Bulliver, who got bought by Citizen in 2008, apparently had been working on recreating this Space View movement for 10 years.
So a modern take on it?
A modern take on it. But they teased this, didn't they, Chris? I'm thinking it's at least 2 years ago they teased this, and then it just went... I think it was the last Baselworld. And then it went completely quiet. There was like one image of it, looked awesome. Anyway, they've released it this week, or at least I don't think anyone's physically seen one, but they've certainly put it up for sale. They've created a movement that it's not quartz, it's not battery powered. I think it must have some kind of reserve battery power in it, but apparently it works. It has 2 rotors in it that look like mini turbines if you look at it, and apparently it works by, as you move your wrist, similar to an automatic watch, it creates an electrostatic charge that then powers the tuning fork. What that means is it's a continuous, it's not quartz, there's a quartz that has stepper motors in it. So it's a continuous movement of this watch, which means it's got sweeping hands like a mechanical one would. I don't know, it's hard to tell really whether it has what power reserve. They're not talking about that, so I don't know if there's I don't even know if you can store electrostatic energy in a battery or capacitor.
Or you just you must keep moving.
Yeah,
or the watch will stop.
I mean, it's an incredible technology, and I was looking forward to this because this looks the absolute business's watch. But when it came out, boy, did you see the price on these bad boys?
I did. I think I saw a particular special edition price, but what are the base? What's the base one going for?
The base model, $3,500.
Whew. Okay. I mean, I guess. Okay.
I mean, this is the most expensive watch that I imagine Bulliver's ever made, or Citizen, the parent company. I can't think of a Citizen watch that ever was that expensive. It looks cool, and the technology is cool. Apparently, there's no watch that's ever used this type of new movement. There's desk clocks that have used this electrostatic energy too. But this is the first time they've got it in a watch. But I just don't know. I mean, it looks cool, but what do you think? Do you think?
Well, it's a completely different movement. So, I mean, you're definitely paying for the research and development of that. I mean, when the original Accutron came out, everybody was, I believe that was a result of the quartz crisis. So everybody was racing to try to figure out technology or a type of movement that could be battery powered but also be accurate, and it's that as everybody rushed to kind of develop that, so that kind of came out of that. This, I feel like, is sort of a development of a renaissance of that. So already you're into the territory of, we didn't have to have this. That kind of engineering, because I think it changes it. If no one has come out with anything that is like this, and you're searching, you're pushing boundaries, things like that, okay, fine. But yeah, here I feel like we have a movement that was created to honor the first one, but also to because we had the technology to do it. I can't fault them on the price. Because it's not anything like, you know what I mean? It's not comparable to anything. I mean, and what I was thinking of is, say you take vinyl, for instance, right? Vinyl records. Well, what did they cost in the 70s? 70s, 80s, a few dollars. Okay, great. And you take the price of inflation and and okay, so nowadays, vinyl records shouldn't cost $700. But here's something where it's like a technology like hi-fi from the 1970s that, you know, that wasn't expanded, that we went back and we did a bunch of stuff to it. So yeah, I can't necessarily fault them. It does look cool, and it certainly is fascinating. And if you haven't seen one in person, they hum, right? They like make a humming noise and not actually. So I assume this new one does something similar.
Possibly. There's just no reviews of it yet. Obviously, it's too early to say. They start at 3,500. There's also a more sporty one that appears to have an integrated bracelet that is a little tad cheaper. But then they have one that's even more expensive with a gold case, and I think that's around, in excess of $10,000, I think, which I just, honestly, I just don't understand where they're going with this, because it appears to be the same watch, but with a gold case. And I can't help but think you could buy a solid piece of gold for and have somebody make a case out of a piece of gold and put the watch in the case.
Place your watch, for the amount of
have
money.
Somebody a experienced jeweler custom make a gold case for you for, I imagine, a fraction of that. I mean, there's probably less than a troy ounce of gold in the case, and obviously that, you know, that troy ounce would be pure gold. But anyway, so yeah, I guess I'm more deflated by it, because if this watch had been $1,000, had been $700, I would have been begging for them to take my money off it.
Shut up and take my money. Yeah.
It just looks awesome.
It does look awesome. Well, you know, that maybe, I mean, in the $3,000 price range, in that range, maybe they're planning. That's a test, and maybe they're planning to see some movement there. I mean, I see a lot of watches. And a lot of watch companies that get flack, you know, it only has an ETA and it's, you know, $2,900 or whatever, in that $3,000, $3,500 price range. So, but those watches don't sell for that. That's MSRP, and then they get discounted, and then, you know, next thing you know, you're like, you could go pick one up at an AD for, you know, $2,100, $2,200, something like that. So, I mean, considering it is like brand new, untouched market, I think they went for what they want to get for it, and then we'll see if Sam can pick one up maybe secondhand for $1,100 someday. That's
a good point. I hadn't factored that in, because we're so used to a world where you don't get a discount on a watch, but as this is in sort of Seiko territory, you're right, this tuning fork movement, there's no doubt about it, this costs significantly more to manufacture than an ETA movement, even a COSC one. Maybe I am being a bit unfair on it.
Maybe. All right.
Let's roll this on then. Next story comes from Watch Pro, and it essentially talks about an auction. So Bob's Watches did an online auction, and for anybody out there, I'm not sponsored by Bob's Watches, but I'm a huge fan. They sponsor me in the fact that they allow me to go there to their warehouse of watches. And they're just like, what watches do you want to play with? And I'm like, could I have a look at these?
The Sam has turned up, and we didn't shoo him away. That's what he likes.
Absolutely. And they are so generous. What they know about watches is awe-inspiring. You walk in there and feel like you know nothing about watches. It's amazing the selection that they've got. Well, instead of this being a sort of a under the table advert for Bob's Watches, but check them out. You can use our affiliate link. They did an online auction. Some things they ended up making 4 watches. They ended up making nearly $100,000. What was interesting is they had 2 pretty rare Rolexes with gilt dials. One went for $30,000, and one went for $30,200.
And this was an online auction that they hosted?
Yes, it was an online auction. So normally, that's a good question, or a good point you make there, Chris. Normally they sell, you just go on and buy them. It's like a Chrono 24 type of situation. But yeah, they actually did an online auction because they found 4 pretty rare watches that I believe that they either had one owner or they'd never really been sold at auction before. People had owned these watches. There was a Explorer, but I guess the interesting thing here is they sold Speedmaster Ed White version. the 105003, and that went for 17,500, which means that those vintage ones seem to be going up in price. I think I don't know what you feel about Speedmaster, but I feel like it depends on the model. Like if you got one of the modern Snoopy ones, they're awesome. And it seems like these Ed White ones. I've seen an Ed White in person, and they are pretty cool. Things are going crazy on the vintage market with.
I feel. And I've seen a sort of a shift of prices and things for that, especially Speedmaster, certain models. And I it was great. We had Todd on last week, and we kind of touched on this, but I think some of those watches from 80s and 90s, are now the neo vintage, the new vintage has come of age. And so if you are interested in picking up a 90s Speedmaster, you probably should do it, because they're going to be grabbed up by collectors and folks looking to add to their collection.
Anyway, let's I think that all that talk of the Accutron really deflated me. I need to to bring it back around.
Well, yeah, I've got one. I've got a story for you.
Yeah, please.
So I was not invited to the Bob's Watches auction. I don't know. I did not get my invite to that. I'm just kidding. But I was invited by eBay. Is rolling out more of its authenticity guarantee badge.
Yeah.
So eBay contacted a bunch of folks about. So now what they're doing is wristwatches sold domestically for $2,000 or more if they have verified returns. If you're selling, you get a bunch of people who are going to have sort of a captive audience. And what this means is you list your watch, and it qualifies for this authenticity guarantee because you're giving some you're offering return, you're putting a bunch of photos, you're listing it correctly, and then you're shipping it to their authenticator. So I'm kind of curious as to who that is, if it's one person, if it's a bunch of people. So if everybody listening or on the Facebook group, that would be super interesting to kind of dig into. If it's a bunch of independent watchmakers kind of all over the place, I think that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool way to do it, instead of having this, how I could imagine Amazon doing it, where it's like, well, we just bought a factory and 100 people, 100 watchmakers into it, and just your watch goes there and gets checked out. So your watch is inspected, and then once they check against the listing description. And again, kind of what we were talking about last time, if it meets the description, they're saying we're going to authenticate it, but I'm sort of curious, like the way they chose their wording very carefully here, that we will inspect it and authenticate and verify each part of the item, and then ship it to the buyer with a unique authentication card. So it sounds like they're going to be able to, weed out any fake Rolex Daytonas or any copies and things like that. But I sort of question how much they'll be able to do and sort of how that process works. Kind of fascinating.
That will be interesting, won't it? Because do they go to part level? Because I know even there's a risk even with some Rolexes that they have aftermarket parts inside them, whether they're authentic, the case and the dial, and I suppose that's the same with any watch,
and I think it would. I'd be interesting to read the terms there, because I think it would go back to the description. I mean, so if I listed my Zin 103, I'd be like, well, it doesn't have a Bell & Ross crown anymore, because the threading on that is gone since 1997. And so I'll give you the Bell & Ross crown, but it's got a Zin replacement. So stuff like that. Yeah, like with Rolex parts, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
You just reminded me. I had a bit of a plan of what I was going to talk about, but I just remembered another story that I can go off the piece with. Don on our Facebook group, who's one of our members from Canada. If you're on the Facebook, you'll know Don he has that really nice Omega Ploprof.
Oh, right.
Watch, and he takes some excellent photos. He followed up on a direct message to me, saying how I was like the better presenter on this podcast. And
oh, I see.
No, that's not really what it said, of course. He wanted to follow up on the story that we were talking about, the buyer's premium at Chrono 24. Do you remember that from a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
He was going on Chrono 24 looking for the Tudor Black Bay Chrono, the silver and gold one. And what he was saying is he's buying from Canada. He was trying to buy a US one. And the ones that he was seeing, he says, are at least 7 to 15% more expensive because of the buyer's premium on Chrono 24 than actually going into an AD.
Yeah. Wow.
So this leads into your eBay thing.
Already. Yeah. I mean, a good move maybe a good move for eBay there. Because if you add the verification, interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because we were talking about whether that might kill their business.
Yeah, it reminds me. So I got a watch recon alert over the weekend that was a used X33 Skywalker. That's one of my, and I think your standard searches, right? And I looked and I pulled up. It had like one picture, and he wanted this person wanted $4,000 for it, and I was like, okay. So my in-laws live in Oregon, and Oregon is tax-free, so I could just call up the AD for Omega. There is one. I checked. I mean, not a watch obsession, totally, and just have them order me one and walk in and pay, I think brand new, $4,300, and that's MSRP, and have a brand new one from the AD and pay no tax,
warranty and everything,
right? Warranty card and everything, and like, no, I'm the first owner. Everybody trying to recoup their 7% and their 3% and their 4%. These watches are going to move up and down, and certainly, buyer beware. What are these? I mean, for all the stuff that I've ever purchased, it's like, what did this go new? What did, I mean, for your Breitling, like, what's a new B1 go for, or when it was new,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well over $4,000. But yeah, you're right, because when you're a seller now on Chrono 24, you're not only going to take your 6% hit, but the buyers, I'm sure, are going to lean on you heavily to compensate them for the extra that they're going to have to charge. That'll be an interesting one to follow. And thanks, Don, for messaging the channel there. Okay, next story up, and this is pretty cool in its own right, but also I wonder what this says about Casio in general. But Britain's strongest man, or Britain's fittest man, I should say, who's a CrossFit. A CrossFit guy, Zach George, he's now become an ambassador for G-Shock. So he's an ambassador for the G-Shock GBH 1000, which is basically a G-Shock that has a heart rate monitoring specific fitness features in it. But it's not a smartwatch in the sense that it doesn't have an LCD screen and it doesn't have Samsung OS. It essentially looks like the last version of the Rangeman. So it has the two-tone display. Well, two questions. Do you think this is the future of smartwatches, where people just are going to be like, hey, look, I just want a heart rate monitor, and the battery's going to last for a lot longer? Is the first question, I guess. And then the second question is, I wonder if Casio are doing this because it's fair to say that they had a very rocky road with their actual smartwatches. I think they probably got that wrong at the time. I don't know what your feelings. What do you think about is this the future of smartwatches, that they'll sort of regress back down to normal watches? Or
I think in some ways, because I think that there doesn't, it's weird too, because Casio, like, if you look at how they progressed, they were trying to, you look at the Frogman and they were trying to put every sensor possible on that thing, right? Yeah. And then here we are, and it almost like flips, because now it's a tiny supercomputer. It's running an operating system. It's got a screen. It's got touch. It like GPS. It knows where, like modern, like an Apple Watch or, any sort of like, Garmin, Fossil, etc. It knows where it is in space. it's got accelerometers, it can orient itself, it can count steps, it can count your heart rate, it can tell you what time it is. I mean, just a million, and it feels like Casio in the beginning sort of got kind of run over there by it. But I feel like they're kind of in an okay space, because if there's one thing that I think can suffer in modern technology is when people make things that try to do too much, and kind of speaking to, the original Casios. So yeah, that's great. Okay. It's a phone, it's an accelerometer, it's a GPS. And you know what? It doesn't do any of those good. The modern way that your heart rate is measured. So most of the heart rate monitors, and I'd be curious to see which one they used, which module they used, but most of the cheap heart rate monitors, they measure your heart rate by counting how much blood is going through your veins. It's crazy with an infrared light. And just the fact that they could even do that. So like not with electricity, not like electro, measuring your actual electrocardiogram, but actually just like looking at your blood vessels.
This is how this one works, actually. You bang on heart rate detected by the blood flow under the skin.
Right. All right. So this is it's a lower power device, which is good, but it's a less accurate device. So, I mean, Apple kind of still gets them there, because Apple has the EG, the electro ECG, the actual, contacts where it can measure electrical activity. So
yeah, I agree with you. I like the fact that they've not gone to town with the smartwatch technology, to be quite honest. The most exciting watch that they've brought out recently for me is the Frogman, and that has a companion app. So they've put all the smarts in the phone app, because you're mostly going to have your phone with you, except for obviously if you're actually diving with it. It looks awesome, that new Frogman. It's around the $800 mark as well, so it's certainly more expensive than a smartwatch, but it just looks the business. And like you say, it's built for purpose. I would worry about breaking an Apple Watch, whereas the G-Shock, you're probably going to lose an arm before you damage the watch in an accident.
Yeah, and then I flew in a helicopter, and then we jumped out of a helicopter, and then we rappelled down, this giant. It's going to be like no matter. So I think as long as they're sticking to that sort of market, and it does what it says on the box, and then offloading some of the features and stuff to Bluetooth. I felt like, early on when these first started to come out, when smartwatches first hit the market, I felt like offloading some of that work to your phone via Bluetooth was kind of cheesy. But now I'm like, I'll just let my phone do this, Did
you feel like it was that old the Seiko TV watch from James Bond, where you had a backpack that went with it?
Right. It doesn't have a brain, but like when my phone tells it to, vibrate the alarm, sure, kind of thing. Yeah.
I think Casio can really excel at this market, because when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, the most exciting watches were Casio. I mean, they had their blood rate, blood pressure, heart rate sensor on watches in the 80s, didn't they? You just put your finger on it and it took the pulse from your finger. They were well ahead of their game, so I'm glad to see that they're at least coming back. And this watch, it looks the business. I really like what they've done here with this one.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Well, let's we've got a few more stories, but let's just pause for a very quick ad break.
Hey, it's Chris from the Casual Watch Talk podcast. As our longtime listeners know, we often talk about cars here on the pod, and that's no coincidence. Like a lot of mechanical watch lovers, we're both into cars and racing. A couple years ago, I curated a collection of automotive-inspired straps and started the Campionato Club. Campionato Club watch straps celebrate the rich history of automotive liveries with their inspired colors. Available in a single-pass NATO, two-piece, and our new super comfy elastic NATO. Check out Campionato Club on the web. That's championship in Italian, CAMPIONATO.club.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Casual Watch. It's not the Casual Watch channel, is it? Hello everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk. So we've got a few more news stories, and then I think Chris, you watched an interesting upload from TGV.
Yeah,
so we might talk about that for a second. But next up in the news, and this is one that certainly was making the rounds on the Facebook group, and Chris, I know you wanted to talk about this, is Seiko. They released some watches, and as far as I can tell, they're not limited editions, which I think is probably the most exciting thing about these for me. But they've released a set of Street Fighter inspired watches. So Street Fighter, the very famous video game, of course.
Spent lots of quarters on this one.
Oh, yeah. I commend them for giving this a go, but I have to say I think these are pretty ugly, dare I say it.
No, I'll let you say it. They're They are boy. They are what they are. They're gaudy, they're bright. They definitely represent the characters. I mean, I looked at the design. I think the design of them, but it's a weird. Okay. So who is this marketing to? So, okay. Who grew up with Street Fighter? I did. You did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm over at my friend's playing it on, we first got it on the Super Nintendo. We're going to the arcades at the beach. We're playing this game. I knew all the moves. Okay. Chun-Li, all the characters. Okay. So I'm now in my 40s. And nostalgia is there for sure, but I don't know anyone young that, I mean, maybe I have this wrong, but I did Street Fighter carry through to kids, that are now in their 20s?
Exactly. And this is something that I know Capcom, obviously, this is a Capcom game, and there's a link there with these could be Invictus, couldn't they? The way they look.
Oh yeah. So I think it taps into the market that, okay, so if you're a DC Marvel, if you're a comic book fan, if you follow all the comic book movies and that's that sort of thing, could I see a Superman watch, right? I'm just pulling this out of my head, right? Like a bright, super bright blue red with the big S on it and gold hands, and again, like as a 40-year-old, are you pulling that one out?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, if anybody's not seen them, brief explanation, they're just the Seiko 5 ones that was the replacement for the SKX 009 and 007. They're not, you're right, they're not overt. You wouldn't look at them on somebody's wrist and know that it was linked to Street Fighter. They're impressions of a watch, I guess, that the characters might wear. Yeah. So the Chun-Li one, it doesn't have like Chun-Li's.
Yeah, it doesn't have characters on it. It doesn't say
yeah.
It doesn't say Capcom on it. Yeah, I mean, I think the design is very creative. Absolutely, very creative. But I struggle to. Yeah, it's cool. It's creative. Very bright. Very colorful. I would have loved to have had this when I was 14, but I don't know if I would be popping one of these on the wrist today.
If you had to go for one, what would you go for? I mean, I think I would probably go for that Chun-Li one.
Yeah, Chun-Li looks good. I think like
a blue
good.
dial.
Plus, you get a 12-hour bezel. That I just want the bezel. I think the bezel's cool
with the Roman. Yeah, it's like a 12-hour bezel, but with the Roman numerals. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. To be honest.
Yeah.
To be honest,
I know. I was like, this is inspiration right now. You're like, who's making this? Who's making this bezel? So yeah.
Yeah, and the last two. The bezel is just a useless thing because there's no markings on the bezel
dots or whatever. On it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think maybe second place would be the white dial, but it's kind of got that funky scratched up. They did a like faux patina scratch. That's the next big thing. Fake scratched bezels. That's what we'll do next.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, if you really having said that, if you really love the video game, then you're also going to have not just played the video game all your life. You're going to have worked hard, because they reckon they're going to be like $450 a piece or something.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel, like if you have all of the minifigures, if you have all the characters, if you have all the video consoles, if you have a Street Fighter 2 in pristine condition game console in your living room, and you got posters everywhere, then you are absolutely going to love this. But short of that, I don't know where their market is for this.
Well, that was quite an interesting news week. But Chris, you and I were having a discussion before this. I've not yet seen this TGV upload, but it sounds like quite an interesting. You were sort of saying that, and I would agree with this, that since his departure from Watchbox, it seems like he's gone back to his roots, really, hasn't he? The more affordable end of the market.
And it's good. I think we have been not critical, but we think we mentioned maybe of this, kind of followed along. We're talking about the urban gentry on YouTube. So his departure from Watchbox has really he's really gone back to his roots, and like the last 2 videos that he's done, super enjoyable, fun to watch. Back to what I think sort of established himself, which is goes into the history of either the brand or sort of what he's thinking, and covers it with really cool B-roll and such. And that was kind of all of it. That was originally kind of his style. And instead of just this, Watchbox style where we just have the watch in your hand and you just kind of talk about, oh, this is our, we're just doing this review. So, the last 2 were pretty fascinating. Let me pull up the channel here for a second.
You're right. I mean, the one thing with TGV is that his passion for the details of the watches, whether it's a $20 Casio or a $500 Seiko or whatever, he definitely wears his heart on his sleeve when he's talking about a watch. You can definitely tell when he's genuinely passionate about a watch or not, I would say. Yeah.
So he his last one was 4 watches every collection needs. It was cool. I enjoyed it, and got me thinking. I sort of feel, and I know we've talked about this, that collection size that sort of makes sense. And the other thing we kind of talked about is splitting out your watches that you're collecting and then watches that you would have every day as options. Yeah, so the 4 watches that he talks about: beater watch, of course, for working out, running, etc. A dress watch, so something for special occasions. A sports everyday travel watch. And then a dive watch, something that you can go swimming with, something that's, summertime fun. For me, I've definitely have those 4 picked out, and I'm curious to know what your 4 would fit in that category.
I think he's definitely got it on the nose here. I would say that there's probably 4 watches that I wear regularly in rotation.
Mm-hmm.
I have very much the collection. The watches that I inherited, which I don't wear those. I just keep them to one side. I've got the watches that I wear, which I think they're 4. I mean, I wear mostly I'm wearing that Breitling B1, which probably covers a number of those genres, I would say.
Yeah. So it's almost your sports pilot travel everyday kind of watch. You got your Citizen.
Yes, which is like a little titanium field watch.
Is it just the B1 on a bracelet for the dress watch?
Well, I think it might. I think I would wear that if I went to like a dress watch occasion. But I've got the Citizen, the little titanium. I've got the G-Shock, which I haven't worn since the gym shut, to be perfectly honest. And then I've got the Ultimate Turtle, and then the B1. Those are the 4 watches that I wear regularly, and I'll wear, of course, being a watch reviewer, I'll wear the watches that are sent in for review. So I've been wearing Dave at Detroit Mints, Mac watch, which is really cool. Check the review out. And then I've been wearing that Goodspeed that was sent in, which I'm going to upload the review on as well. But yeah, you're right. My core collection is 4. What about you? Is yours around 4 or that you regularly rotate through?
I think I've got like one that I haven't decided that if I want to give up. So I've got Solar G-Shock beater. And then for my dress watch, I have an Orient Bambino. What is it? Jody's great video about did you fall for the Bambino trap?
Did you buy one in the end? Because I know you bought one thinking it was going to be as good as a Bambino, but it was a bit disappointing. Right.
Yeah, I sent that one back, but I have a white dial Bambino from, I think I've had it for maybe almost 3 years, maybe 2.5 years, that I bought at Thanksgiving Christmas sale. It was like 50% off the Orient website. So I think it was like $130, which for that watch, if you got, if you're interested in filling out that 4 watch collection, can't go wrong. Lots of styles there. But that one I'm not too sure about because you haven't seen it and I haven't worn it a lot, and I don't tend to bring it out. And I don't know. I don't think it's now as maybe special as some of the other stuff that I have. And I feel like if I was a dress look, if I was, you know, as a suit and tie sort of situation, I'd put my GMT, Bell and Rouse GMT on a bracelet, because it's kind of got a presidential bracelet kind of style. So.
This might make a good topic for a YouTube or maybe on our podcast. Dress watches, are they, especially in this time when everybody's working from home?
Right.
I mean, unless you really like the look of it. I mean, there's probably...
Yeah. I have seen some guys, some diehards on Instagram, definitely, you know, rocking the dress watch, or the very sporty dress watches, you know, sitting at home with the slippers on kind of thing. But it does ask the question. And then, you know, then there are certain, I think of an occasion where if I was at a social occasion, if that can ever happen again. So 2021, we're all vaccinated, we're all safe, and I'm at a social maybe something fun with people I know. I would probably rock a chronograph on a leather strap as a conversation piece than I would put the Bambino on.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't. I mean, I suppose one of my watches could technically be a dress watch, but I wouldn't wear it to a formal occasion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's definitely fallen down to like, during pandemic, it's definitely fallen down to like, watches that can be put on rubber straps and watches that can go back on bracelets, and that's kind of like, absolutely. And watches that can survive a soapy shower. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that was really interesting, that, Chris. Let us know over on the Facebook group. A big thanks to everyone that's joined recently. It's going from strength to strength, the Facebook group. A lot of really cool posts on there. I'm learning something new every day. I don't know what you think, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about luxury quartz the other day. The Zin UX, and it's an oil-filled watch. Lots of good stuff on there. Michael brought that up, and
we'll arrange another meetup within the next couple of weeks for sure. I know we give a lot of people very short notice of the last one, but we had a great little meetup there. We'll have to arrange another one, and we'll post that on the Facebook group. So if you're interested in doing a sort of virtual watch meet we used Google Meet, I think, and it worked out well. Yeah. It was moderated. I moderated it pretty heavy, but I think it was good. You let everybody get a chance to talk about what they've got and share their watch and their stories, which was fun. Well, as always, guys, we really appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks, guys. Bye.